Well, I wasn't planning to make another video on Glenn Beck for quite a while, but because we are deeply researching him right now and watching his every move, I needed to add this addendum to the part one video we just posted. I shot that a few days ago, and Aaron was done adding documentation to the piece, and we had a chance to watch Beck on Monday and Tuesday of this week, and I said, listen, Aaron, I need you to put together another video that basically adds on to what I said a few days ago when we shot the first one that you've just seen, part one of Is Glenn Beck for Real? Because we've really been soul searching. We've really been putting our minds together and deeply researching to understand the Tea Parties, the Republicans trying to take it over, Glenn Beck and the issues he's covering on his show. And just since we shot that video, I've had more basic revelations of what's really happening here. There is no doubt that Glenn Beck is trailblazing and doing things on national television that's never been done before. And that's basically chalked up to the fact that world government's now out in the open. The neocons and fake conservatives can't deny it anymore. And the establishment is just positioning Glenn Beck to control that market. The establishment has realized that if they can't beat us, they're going to join us and try to basically infiltrate the true patriot movement from within to control it. Going back to Barry Goldwater and long before him, real conservatives, real constitutionalists understood what was happening. And if you research the different government documents that have been released and what Carol Quigley has written about, you understand that mega corporations, basically the heirs of the robber barons, want to collectivize the wealth of the working class and the middle class and use a communist system to transfer that wealth offshore to the globalists who are transnational and are above the laws that they implement against the nation states. And that's the biggest issue here. Watching Glenn Beck, he talks about 500 mobile x-ray systems that are looking through your houses, through your walls, and says it's Obama and a few little communist professors that are doing it. He talks about Obama has a list of American citizens to be assassinated and how that's wrong. Well, that started under George W. Bush. He basically takes everything we talk about, but then misdirects it from the Pentagon, from the Rand Corporation, from the Ford Foundation, and others who are on record promoting world government, and blames it on low-level academics who are just basically the socialistic or communistic operatives who go out and create the grassroots false paradigm that revolution is socialist or collectivist or progressive. And that's what they're doing. Glenn, we've explained this to you. Globalism doesn't take my money and give it to Venezuela. It takes my money and gives it to Goldman Sachs and Rupert Murdoch through federal government purchases of fake news. Beck and other mainline conservatives take reports like this one that we reported on 2 years ago. Actually, two reports. Global Governance, a Critical Juncture, National Intelligence Council, U.S. government and the European Union, and National Intelligence Council, Global Trends 2025, A Transformed World. And he claims that low-level union bosses and communists are the ones implementing this planetary takeover. Glenn, researchers have been given access to the Ford Foundation. They've been given access to the Rand Corporation going back to the 40s and 50s, where the Pentagon and the military-industrial complex said they were going to create a form of collectivism to control populations. It is the major mega corporations that get all of this corporate welfare, the trillions of dollars a year with the defense budgets, the trillions in banker bailouts. They are the collectivists. They are the people that created the United Nations. Glenn, why don't you tell folks that the Pentagon created the UN in 1945? Why don't you explain to them all of that information? I mean, you talk about Carol Quigley, you quote his book, Tragedy and Hope. Carol Quigley explains he was given access by the Defense Department to the archives of the globalists and how they control fascist, communist, socialist, anybody that's collectivist or progressive, as you call it. So at the end of the day, you've got this big globalist agenda going on. You've got society being bankrupted from within through derivatives and the different things that Goldman Sachs and others have done. But you don't hear him talking about Larry Summers being near the top of the pyramid, or the Queen of England, or BP, or even Bill Gates. No. It's all little communist professors and union heads and others who are mid-level at best in this system. Let's get one thing straight. The robber barons financed communism. Anthony Sutton from the congressional reports that were issued has written the definitive work on that issue. Wall Street and the British banks also funded Hitler. And you've admitted that eugenics came from England and the United States. You clearly know all of this. We are being conquered. We are in the process of a financial takeover of our society. And it's clear that your job is to basically scapegoat low-level communists that are only one part of this controlled paradigm with the entire agenda of the global corporations that are engineering this collapse that is bringing us into world government. But it doesn't matter if you're a sellout or not. Your bosses have begrudgingly come out and admitted there's a world government because you can't deny it anymore. Because people like myself and Ron Paul and my millions of listeners have done their job. Let me tell you something. We're not going to stop. We're going to continue to expose what's happening. And you're not going to be able to co-opt this movement of true liberty and freedom, no matter how much you plagiarize our work, no matter how much you twist it. But again, I will encourage you. You are making some progress. But I noticed that just a week ago, you reported on Bill Gates praising death panels. But then I watched you today praising Bill Gates as some type of great free market capitalist. You said last week that you were going to spend this entire week on eugenics and the New World Order and global government and population reduction. And I've seen nothing from you this week on it. Maybe you'll cover it later. But will you blame it on some union head or some communist moron professor conned by the globalist false paradigm? This is what we're talking about, Beck. I understand you're a hired mercenary, and I've seen you do flip-flops over and over again. And many people like Lou Rockwell have pointed out that your reportage is schizophrenic. It's good one day, bad the next. But in the final equation, you need to understand that we the people are awake, and you are going to be held accountable when the Republicans come into office if you flip-flop. In the final equation, as political scientists, just analyzing what's happening, the system is desperate. The public is aware of their scientific dictatorship. They know that we're waking up, and the big robber barons want collectivism to control and enslave and dominate and parasitically suck off of the general public. But they don't want a, quote, real communism, which is also a nightmare, to come to the fore and rob them of their wealth. They want to take your wealth. The reason I'm somewhat positive about Beck and others now admitting global governance is people are going to see their shows, then they're going to find Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. They're going to find my syndicated radio show, and they're going to go to the bottom of the rabbit hole and understand what this agenda is. One of the biggest tells with Beck is that he claims 9/11 truthers are violent, they're dangerous, they're somehow involved with the terrorist. But then Beck talks about problem, reaction, solution every day. How the globalists create crises to then offer the solution. But he never tells you about Operation Northwest, the declassified U.S. government plans to stage 9/11 style attacks. He never tells you about Gulf of Tonkin being staged. But he understands crisis creation, similar to Hitler firebombing his own Capitol building, the Reichstag, in February of 1933. Beck understands this. He's read Carroll Quigley's book, but he doesn't tell you that Carroll Quigley explained that the controllers of this planet, the ruling class, are using anything that is an authoritarian model to collectivize our wealth. He doesn't tell you that it's the ultra-rich that are using this system. He isn't connecting the dots. And we're so late in this game, we've got to reach out to people now to expose this, or it's over for our society. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. We wrote a story that was linked to mainstream news at PrisonPlanet.com. The Drudge Report picked it up. We're appreciative for that. New cybersecurity bill gives Obama power to shut down companies. The legislation states it federally certifies all IT professionals and basically makes them government agents. But Beck would tell us that this is Obama. This is some low-level communist professors doing this. No, this is the Pentagon. that runs this system. And we've got the former head of the CIA telling the Los Angeles Times, Mr. Hayden, that U.S. should be able to shut down internet, former CIA chief says. The system is desperate. They're afraid of the alternative media. They know they're being displaced by the alternative media. But I want you to listen very carefully to a term I'm about to introduce to you. It's continuity of agenda. It doesn't matter what president or what Congress comes into power, this move towards global government continues. All the different forms of tyranny, whether it's naked body scanners, the Patriot Act, citizens being spied on, it only continues under this system. And Glenn Beck is so upset that the fact that government-sponsored terrorism and false flag events is now part of the public discourse and is now understood. He's upset because the system wants to continue to stage these attacks to make Homeland Security and the Pentagon our saviors. And when you read the Rand Corporation and Ford Foundation and Carnegie Endowment's own reports on this, they were talking 50 years ago about staging terror attacks. So I want to be crystal clear. If you'll just go read the Ford Foundation documents, the Rand Corporation documents, the Carnegie Endowment documents, they are the collectivists, not a bunch of hippies. You think a bunch of hippies could bring down the U.S.? They're only one controlled agenda in this system. Here's another example. You know, we were sent by law enforcement the MIAC and Homeland Security reports, where Obama is saying the main focus of Homeland Security is patriots, gun owners, conservatives, returning veterans. But we had the same reports under Bush. We broke those, but the media didn't pick up on it. Because George Bush, A, he's the president, supposedly run things, which he didn't, and B, you know, he's a conservative, he wouldn't do something like that. It's been all over the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and other newspapers that an Israeli company was paid hundreds of thousands of dollars by Homeland Security and state Homeland Security to spy on everybody. Tea parties, members of the House of Representatives, libertarians. It didn't matter. Anybody who was politically involved. Have you heard anything from Glenn Beck about this? No, you haven't, but you certainly have heard about it at Infowars.com. Cybersecurity didn't start under Obama. It didn't start under Bush. You can go back 35 years and read DARPA and the Rand Corporation talking about how the internet was going to be this control grid. This is transpartisan. This is a continuity of agenda. And we have no future if we don't wake up and face this. These major government think tanks that are funded by the Pentagon openly say they want to enslave you. Who's always been the number one threat to third world countries? Their military. Not the average grunt on the ground, but the leadership of it. Who was the threat 2,040 plus years ago in Rome? It was Caesar, the general, bringing his armies across the Rubicon and taking over Rome. This is happening again. And they know you're aware of this takeover, so they're telling you that one group of their own minions is behind it all, the lowly communist. And when you realize that, you understand the larger picture. So we made this first video, part one, is Glenn Beck for real? He's the best on national television. But when you really watch it, when you really break it down, you understand that the system is in control because it knows how to control opposition. And right now, the Republicans, who are controlled by the globalists, are playing the part of the opposition so they can control the opposition and stay in power when their party gets back into office. We have to ensure that real libertarians, real constitutionalists like Ron Paul stay in office and get into office, who understand that it's the mega corporations that are collectivizing things. And that's what Glenn Beck will not tell you. We will tell you at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. Every day when I look at my children, I become angry because they are good and innocent and pure, and they deserve to have a better life and not be slaves of the scientific dictatorship. So we're going to hold Glenn Beck's feet to the fire. We're going to hold the establishment's feet to the fire, and we're going to expose their New World Order paradigm.
Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.